Welcome to our next class. In this class we will continue with the surface plane, element number 5, and review some additional design principles such as color, line, shape, and form. To review, we are at the surface plane where we are actually developing the finished product. Developing the finished product is where the content and functionality and the aesthetics come together. At this point we are largely, but not solely, focusing on visual appeal. The surface plane will fulfill all of the goals of the below planes, which is why it's a good idea to plan your product in a logical, orderly fashion. So at the surface, we are arranging the elements to enable movement throughout the product. We are concerned with interaction and navigation if applicable. Not only are we concerned with the sensory design, which is our visual communication, but the logical design, which is conceptual communication, because the user needs to understand. So good design portrays the content, communicates a message, and communicates a feeling. We have looked at the principles of design. Here again, they might vary with the source. And we have looked at some of the elements of design, and we will continue today with more of these elements. White space is essentially the absence of some color or the absence of text. It doesn't necessarily mean it's white. It is a very good technique to draw attention. It helps to eliminate clutter. Also, in the early days, when we only had print media, it was expensive to print things, and therefore a business might try to cram everything on one business card or on a small brochure, because that was all they could afford. But the bigger businesses who could afford more would have more white space. So white space can connote that you value your business or you value your product. You don't want to cramp everything. You can afford to space it out. Here's some good examples of white space. On the left are blue. Notice, as I said, white space doesn't mean it's white. It just means it's the absence of color or text. In this instance, it's the absence of additional text or content. And on the white, and on the right, the red block, a lot of nice spacing around the type. Here is a nice layout where there's hardly anything here, but because of the white space, it catches our eye, it draws attention, and it's very easy to perceive the message, although it's not easy to perceive it in this video probably. It's a lawnmower ad. Alright, here again, a fashion ad. Alright, and this is actually from a website. Underneath the logo you can see some other links. And here again, it's pretty obvious as to the message and a little bit of the emotion that we're conveying to the user. The Google homepage has a lot of white space. If you ever hear this less is more concept, it means that the less you have sometimes is better than having a whole lot, because when you have a little bit, it is more meaningful and can be utilized better by the user than overcrowding. So one of the elements that we're going to look at today is form. Form refers to all of the shapes and how they relate to each other. So if we have good form in a product design, it will look like everything belongs together. And form can be three-dimensional. For example, you would have form in a mobile phone. Shape, on the other hand, is a two-dimensional concept. So one of the reasons that we do a wireframe is to make sure that we do have good form. Make sure that we have symmetry and balance and that we have enough white space. It's never a good idea to start coding and start developing. You always need to have that wireframe sketch so that you see where the content is pretty much going to go, so you know that you have good form. Shape. We talked about shape as being two-dimensional. Every self-contained area is in some kind of a shape, and that shape will have a width and height. We have geometric shapes such as circles, squares, triangles, polygons, etc. We also have what are called organic shape. An organic shape would be the shape of something organic, real, like leaves or flowers. So here up top we see some organic shapes, and if you're a Photoshop user, you're very much aware of the shape brush. And underneath we have our geometric shapes, and they all can play a role in your product design. Lines. We use lines in our design. A line is essentially a continuation of a point if you have a geometry background. Lines are essentially vertical, horizontal, or diagonal. They can be used to outline a shape. They can be very effective in that way. They also could be the point at which two shapes meet. A line can have width, length, thickness, texture, color, and direction. Lines can enhance a shape. They can be used to create areas of emphasis, creating borders, setting boundaries, used to organize content. They can create a feeling or emotion, imply movement, and they can draw the eye in a direction. Here's an example of a web page that uses lines. Notice a line is used as a boundary between the navigation and the heading here. We have a couple lines here focusing your eye on the center. We have this shape here edged out in a line boundary. We have a line in our curve here. We have an outline. We have lines going down in our background, all adding to the design. Here again, we have lines emphasizing, drawing, emphasizing, catching your eye. We have lines separating content, drawing boundaries, also organizing and unifying content. Color. Color plays an important role in design. Color is referred to as hue if you come across that terminology. So we want to choose harmonious colors that go well together. And colors can be used to set a mood or an emotion, to support the information. So here we're going back to the strategy plane. What are our goals and objectives, and how are we going to support them? One way that we can support them, emphasize them, is by choosing good color. Alright, so color used as a medium. Just to point a few things out here, we have in the color world, especially if you have taken Photoshop Illustrator, you're familiar with RGB color mode and CMYK color mode. So if you're working on the computer screen, and that includes a mobile device, you're working with RGB values. Print is CMYK. Cyan, magenta, yellow, black, which corresponds to our inkjet colors. Alright, so some of the things that we need to consider when choosing colors. Number one, here again, back to the strategy plane. Colors that go with the business, if there are certain colors that represent the business. Colors from the logo, alright? Or possibly colors that are related to the product or service. You want to work with them. because that's part of your strategy. Back to the strategy again, colors that appeal to the audience. Who is the audience? Is the audience young? They're going to want louder colors than an audience of seniors. Okay, fads and trends. Colors do go through fads and trends. And that might be important in your decision. Another thing you want, if there are no other reasons for choosing colors, make sure that you do choose colors different from your competitors. And also you want to choose a design different from your competitors. There's no way that you want someone to think that you are somebody else. Alright, so here we have a color wheel. And the color wheel that we're going to be looking at starts with our primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. This is our RGB values. And on the computer monitor, colors are composed of these values. In the print world, they're composed of CMYK. I'm just looking at the RGB in this video. So these are what are called primary colors. Secondary colors are produced by combining the colors adjacent to the primary colors. So it's just kind of interesting, that's where they come from. Tertiary colors are a combination of the primary and secondary colors. A tint. A tint is any color with a shade of white added. So tints, the white will lighten the color. So here we see tints of a color. These work very well when you're choosing color combinations, choosing tints of a color. A shade, on the other hand, is the opposite. It's that color mixed with black. So shades will darken a color. All right, shades are essentially the darker variations. All right, so when we design, we want to look at color harmonies, different combinations of colors that are aesthetically pleasing. A monochromatic color scheme essentially consists of tints, tones, and shades of a single color or a single hue. All right, so remember, it's all based on a single color, so variations in lightness and in darkness will blend in together. So by adding sometimes gray, black, and white, gray would add the tones in there. All right, so we're looking at tint, shades, and tone. Analogous, using colors that are adjacent to the primary color on the color wheel, gives you the ability to use a dominant and a minor color to enrich the scheme. Complementary colors are opposite on the color wheel, and they're very good for producing high contrast. You might also see a triad color scheme, and this will be made of 3 colors that are equally distant. So it's a good idea to have a little bit of a plan with respect to choosing colors than just randomly trying to find something that looks good. Color moods. Different colors represent different moods, and this goes back to psychology. For example, the color red is more of a passionate color, whereas blue is a calm color. And by the way, if you don't know what color to use, blue is the universal choice. It always works well. So let's take a look at the same website with respect to 4 different choices of colors. All right, so it's actually a spa. It's the Riverside Spa. And here you see more of an orangish color. So you're looking at more of a passion or energy. Now we see it in blue, which is calm. Blue works well. Now we see it with 2 different colors. We see a subdued blue and a subdued, more of a pinkish. And now we have brown. Which one is the more, if you're looking at a spa, here again, this is a product. We are appealing to the user in a visual, sensory capacity. Which color represents our product the best? I think this one. The more calming, relaxing, healing colors. All right, so with respect to several colors, light on dark. Light on dark works very well. Here again, we're going back to contrast, the principle of design. Another light on dark, a little bit reversed now. The background is light and the text is dark. Here we have some dark on light contrasting. Not only with our backgrounds and our lighter text, but we also have our dark shadows as a contrast. Here again, you Photoshop users, your drop shadows add depth. This is a contrast. Texture. The surface can have texture. A shape, a line can have some kind of a texture. It can be rough, smooth surface, glossy, hard, etc. Here again, if it's a physical product, there could be some kind of texture to the physical device, or it could be visual, meaning it looks that way. Alright, so you're looking at texture as the degree of roughness or smoothness, which also gives depth to a design. Texture works well in combination with shapes, lines, colors, typography, which we're going to look at later. With respect to web, elements such as backgrounds, headers, footers, sidebars, buttons, dividers. Here's an example of a guitar, and you can see that there's texture. We also see this reflection, which was very big 5 years ago. A texture, a glossy surface. Here we see texture in the background on this website. And I tend to think that this type of style is going away. We're going to a more minimalistic approach at this point.